Welcome to Nelson's Mainland Television Regional News. I'm Carly Danner. In the news today, peaceful TPP protest outside local government conference, political leaders back-to-back at the Rutherford, bitter defeat for Bauer, transport manager encourages Rock Road feedback, Kath B takes the Children's Music Video of the Year. A handful of peaceful TPP protesters awaited the arrival of political leaders outside the local government conference, which was into its second day on Tuesday. Over 500 delegates have descended on the region for the three-day conference based at the Rutherford Hotel. The program for 2014 has been filled with highly regarded speakers, discussing key topics such as government and regional performance, the latter of which was addressed by two main political party leaders and the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research chief economist. Nelson man Graham O'Brien, a leading figure behind the TPP protest, have been informing the public and the councils to act now before the TPP agreement is signed to pass a resolution to enable local body councils to reject some of the clauses and have some legal protections if the TPPA is signed in its current form. The concern for many New Zealanders about the TPPA includes intellectual property, pharmaceuticals, the internet, and innovation. Professor of Law Jane Kelsey has been expressing her view against the government signing the agreement based on the secrecy of what it contains and leaked TPP documents that have heightened more concerns. LGNZ President Lawrence Yule spoke ahead of Prime Minister John Key, who addressed the situation as he sees it in the regions.
Central government by itself cannot address the diversity of issues facing our communities. And moving New Zealand forward must involve a new collaborative approach. A new partnership must be established.
It's great to be in Nelson, and it's great to be back at the Local Government New Zealand Conference. I think it's the 7th conference I've spoken at. So most of our regions have a lower unemployment rate than Auckland. In fact, 8 of the 11 regions around New Zealand have a lower unemployment rate than Auckland. Some of the specific things we are doing in the business growth agenda to encourage regional economic development include NZTE's new regional investment attraction profiles, which promote regional investment opportunities to investors, and the new entrepreneur work visa, which encourages business migrants to settle and set up businesses in regional New Zealand. Most of the regional economies are based on our abundant natural resources. So if you have a look at what's happening out there, and there have been some tremendous success stories when you look at that. So Southland's had a good run as a result of dairy conversions. Mid-Canterbury and South Canterbury are doing well because of irrigation, and 5,000 people in Taranaki, either directly or indirectly, earn their incomes from the oil and gas sector. In Northland, it's forestry and dairy. In Hawke's Bay, it's vineyards and horticulture, while the Bay of Plenty is growing with the recovery, of course, of kiwi fruit. Other industries like ICT, high-tech manufacturing and tourism are part of every regional success story, but it's the natural resources sector that drive most growth in the regions. Our challenge, I think, therefore, is to keep growing our regional economies and the jobs that go with it, while also improving our environmental outcomes. That's why the government has tackled some difficult issues which for too long, frankly, have been sidelined.
However, the PM's positive view of the regions was in stark contrast to the picture painted by NZER principal economist, who spoke at the conference on Monday. His speech was titled "The Changing Face of Our Regions."
There is so much opportunity through the regions and provinces of New Zealand, but I don't see enough leadership. I know you guys are working really hard on it, but we need one voice of what it means to be New Zealand. What is going to be the catalyst for change? Who is going to inspire us forward? Who is going to be the voice of New Zealand outside of Auckland and Wellington? Who is going to talk about your issues, your opportunities, and your progress? Well, it's not going to be the bank accounts, is it? I've been very angry with them recently because I came out recently and they said that we shouldn't be raising interest rates anymore because it's going to really hurt the other parts of New Zealand outside of Auckland housing. And the reaction from the banks was, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, actually I do. I have been around New Zealand, I do travel, and I do talk to real businesses.
Leader of the opposition, David Cunliffe, also shed his light on regional development.
We are not interested in being white knights riding into town from capital city to tell you what to do. We are interested in making sure that the economic potential of New Zealand's regions is unlocked. And that's absolutely critical to making sure New Zealand's economy prospers. And that's why I've taken the regional development portfolio in our party, and it's why I'm announcing our regional development policy today. Labour will work in a new partnership with each region to develop a regional growth plan. These plans will identify the opportunities and barriers to growth, as well as practical measures to create a step change for each region's economy. These regional growth plans will not just be more strategy documents to gather dust on the shelf. Labour is going to back these plans by investing in infrastructure and investing in our people. We also understand that every region is different and has its own strengths. Unlike the current government, we don't believe in a one-size-fits-all answer for everyone, like more dairy cows or more oil exploration. Like I said, Labour is fundamentally about taking the long view. We understand that the kinds of projects and infrastructure required to generate ongoing sustainable wealth in the regions shouldn't stand or fall on whether they make a quick buck or not. I don't think that there's anyone in this room who doesn't know of at least one project that would help grow their region's wealth but just can't get across the line because of a lack of sustainable investment. In my time as regional development spokesperson, I've seen more than a few. Ideas like the Opotiki Harbour development, which would create nearly 300 jobs in a town with twice the national rate of people on the benefit. And the tragic events of recent weeks indicate the importance of creating jobs in communities like that. Or ideas like restoring the Gisborne to Napier rail line that could be crucial for the efficient processing of East Coast timber and providing a sustainable future backbone to the East Coast. Or rebuilding Dunedin's heavy engineering capability and accelerating its knowledge industries in the wake of years of the current government's neglect. Good ideas that will have community-wide economic benefits, but which face a basic equity gap that simply can't get the cornerstone investment that they need. Indeed, it's been happening for too long that the many good ideas don't even make it to a business case because they won't get backing no matter how well they stack up. If we want to grow the regions and unlock their economic potential, if we want to breathe life back into our neglected cities and towns and ensure our kids can get a great education and a decent job in the communities that they grew up in, then we need to put some resources, some money, into creating those opportunities.
Chrissy Small had the opportunity to speak with David Cunliffe in more depth about the regions on Monday in Nelson.
Just before we go, the TPPA is a big issue. A lot of people are a bit frightened by it. Of course, Professor Jane Kelsey has been quite outspoken about the secret nature of it and the leaked documents that have emerged. This really concerns local government as well. Is anyone talking on the TPPA at the LGC?
Look, I haven't been around the meetings where that's been discussed, so I can't answer that question. What I would say is I completely agree that there's a secret process underway on this TPP. The government needs to put the draft agreement into the public domain so that New Zealanders can make up their own minds about what they think about it. What we know is that our people got rolled in the intellectual property chapter. The government is not saying how much extra it will cost for our medicines. The Pharmac gets done over by the pharmaceutical manufacturers, and I'm particularly worried, and so will local government people, about what they call the investor-state dispute settlement provisions, which mean our government could be sued in an international tribunal by a multinational corporation.
Seems to be of benefit only for the multinationals, this agreement, as it's looking.
It's too early to tell. We need the government to put it in the public domain. There may be some benefits for New Zealand exporters, and that'll have to be weighed against the costs to New Zealand firms and to the New Zealand public. And the hardest part is that some of those costs will be immediate and some of them will be spread over many years.
If the agreement is signed, is that binding on any other government?
As with all treaties, once they are signed, they become binding on the government. Now, it's technically possible for a future government to withdraw from the provisions of a treaty, but they'd have to negotiate their way out, and that's a difficult process.
And costly?
And probably costly.
Meanwhile, back at the conference, the Prime Minister talked about setting up a task force to address the RMA process in view of cutting red tape with respect to landowners developing their properties.
Also, if we have the privilege of returning to government after the election, one of our top priorities will be to progress the Resource Management Act amendments that we've had to park up for the time being. Changes to the RMA will tackle housing affordability by freeing up land supply and making it easier to build and extend and renovate houses. Consenting will be sped up and simplified. And we continue to be guided by balance and pragmatism, as well as reform planning laws for the benefit of New Zealanders. I want to touch for a moment on an issue that I know is of real concern to local government, and that's earthquake-prone buildings. We introduced the Earthquake-Prone Building Amendment Bill to strike the right balance between protecting people from harm in an earthquake and the cost of strengthening or removing buildings. I know this is a very vexed issue, and it's an issue that's raised with me right around the country, particularly in rural and regional parts of New Zealand. No one wants to see councils or communities shoulder unnecessary heavy financial burden, and actually no one wants to see historic buildings knocked down unnecessarily around the country. So I'm pleased that Building and Construction Minister Nick Smith has been working with mayors and local government New Zealand to work through the impacts of new legislation, particularly in regions where the risk of an earthquake is extremely low. You will have seen the announcement earlier this month that farm buildings will be exempt from earthquake risk assessment requirements. Nick Smith is also looking at keeping other low-risk buildings out of the regime as we seek to minimise the costs. So I think it's fair to say that we're trying to find a genuine balance here between obviously the need to protect New Zealanders in the event of a major seismic event, but on the other side of the coin, being realistic actually about the cost that imposes on building owners and on communities, some of which these buildings are owned by councils or not-for-profit organisations. So it's getting that balance right. Nick's made some important changes so far. I think there'll be more to come, and you should feel free to continue to voice your concerns if you see them about that issue, and we'll see if we can get that balance more perfectly set, if you like, on the basis if we become the government after the election. So, ladies and gentlemen, when I was coming in, I was listening obviously to Lawrence about LGNZ's election manifesto. So the government agrees wholeheartedly with the point made in the manifesto that central and local government needs regulations that are effective and that do not place onerous costs on communities. Too often regulations are confusing, they change from region to region unnecessarily, and they suck up councils' precious resources in administration. It's one of the issues that is raised at the local government forum. So today I'm pleased to announce that Local Government Minister Paula Bennett will establish a central government and local government review group known as the Rules Reduction Task Force. This task force will listen to local concerns and find opportunities to reduce and improve local regulation. It's part of our response to the Productivity Commission's report on better local regulation, which Paula and Bill English released this morning. The task force will comprise of people from both central and local government, along with tradespeople, and will root out local regulation that could be improved. Some things on the face of it just simply don't make sense, like making it compulsory for a homeowner to install windows in a room that already lets in lots of light through the ranch slider doors. That's the sort of thing this task force will be looking at. They'll want to know about regulations that throw up needless bureaucratic hurdles for property owners or that do not deliver what they're intended to do. We already know that there are property owners up and down the country who are frustrated with the regulatory requirements they must meet and the time and money it takes to complete transactions.
2 Rocks Road options are on the table for discussion, with feedback now being sought from the public. Transfer Agency Regional Performance Manager Mark Owen says the Rocks Road options being consulted on are tailored to the specific needs of the area. Mr. Owen says providing cycling and walking facilities is not a one-size-fits-all approach. He says they have worked together with Nelson City Council to develop options which improve walking and cycling facilities for residents and tourists in Nelson, and they are keen to hear the views of the community on their preferred concept at this stage in the project. The feedback period opens on the 24th of July and closes on the 25th of August. The information will be included on the Council website. Copies will also be available to view at Council offices and libraries. The analysis of community feedback will be reported back to Council and the Transport Agency and will inform their decision-making on whether this project will progress. Details on the concept are as follows. Concept 1. Upgraded on-road cycle lanes 1.5 meter width, a 2.4 meter footpath for pedestrians, 37 parking spaces out of the current 279 public parking spaces would be lost. 3 new spaces would be added near the restaurants. Concept 2. 4 meters wide off-road shared cycling walking path on the seaward side. Separated 3 meter cycle path and 2.4 meter pedestrian footpath between the Plant and Food Building and the Boat Shed Cafe. 83 parking spaces out of the current 279 public parking spaces would be lost. Mayor Rachel Reese says the 2 concepts they are seeking feedback on are the only 2 that they have considered both financially and physically viable. The estimated cost of Concept 1 is $9 to $13 million. She says for Concept 2, the estimated cost is approximately $11 to $15 million. A third concept that was judged to be too expensive is included for information only. On Sunday, one of our own came oh so close to a major achievement in the world of sport. Golden Bay's Jack Bauer is competing in the world's largest annual sporting event, the Tour de France, and was trying to become the first Kiwi ever to win a stage in the Tour. On Sunday, during the 15th stage of the Tour, Bauer, who rides for the Garmin Sharp team, had put in an unbelievable ride for more than 200 kilometers and led with only 1 kilometer to go, but with tiring legs and a clutch of sprinters chasing, he was eventually caught with just 15 meters remaining. The 29-year-old was reduced to tears and a dream crushed. It's a childhood dream to try to win a stage of the Tour, especially for a Kiwi, said Bauer. Not many of us ever get the chance. I really gave it absolutely everything. As you could see from my meltdown at the finish line, I was pretty disappointed. Bauer ended up finishing the stage in 10th place and sits at 144th overall thus far. Nonetheless, the race goes on and so will Bauer. Jack Bauer will have 24 hours to rest before the riders enter a phase that features a 3-day ride in the Pyrenees Mountains. Local musician Kath B. has taken out of the Children's Music Video of the Year Awards for her song Dragons Under My Bed. Her video was open to public voting in which she was up against 2 other contenders. Here's a clip from her winning video.
Something happens in my room at night. Straight after Mum turns out the light, I hear the giggling from under my bed, and then I see the glowing eyes of red. As if that isn't enough surprise, little puffs of smoke, they start to rise. I hear the breathing deep and strong, and that's when I know there's something wrong.
After the break, we'll bring you the latest weather update and some events and happenings coming up from around the region.